Hello, Ethno Arts Podcast listeners. You are invited to join Payab University's Linguistics Institute in its next round of advanced ethno arts courses. These courses are designed for nationals and expatriate field workers of any domain. It will cover principles of ethno arts work and give students practical skills in analysis, research, and applying ethno arts, including specific ways to incorporate ethno arts in their own field work. To find out more, email ethnoarts.courses@gmail.com. Application deadline is July 1st, 2025. Hope to see you there!
3, 2, 1, go!
Welcome back to Sparky Creativity, the Ethno Arts podcast, where we hear stories from around the world about how communities are connecting with God, engaging with the Bible, and sharing the gospel in meaningful ways according to their culture. I'm your host, Justin, and today I am happy to be joined by one of our volunteers, Melinda, who did an interview for us with an Ethno Arts colleague from Jamaica, and we're looking forward to hearing about that. But we first just wanted to introduce you to Melinda and let you know who she is and what she's doing and how she's been a part of helping with the podcast, and just to, let you know who she is and get to know this new voice that you're hearing. So, Melinda, would you like to say hi?
Sure. Hi, everyone. So glad to be here.
Can you tell us just a little bit about where you are and a little bit about you?
Yeah, I live in South Carolina, and I am a violin teacher by day, and then I just enjoy family life the rest of the time.
And how did you come into this ethno arts world?
That's a really good question. I think I've always been drawn to different sounds, different cultures. As a violin teacher, I would teach students music, and sometimes I would think, I wonder what it would sound like somewhere else with a different instrument or a different background, backtrack to it. And so when I was looking to pursue a master's degree, I stumbled upon a degree at Liberty University that combined ethnomusicology with worship studies, and I was already doing a lot of music within a church, so it just made sense to study those two things together and really bring Revelation 7:9 to life. Knowing that all nations are going to worship God. And so I just thought it'd be kind of nice to explore how that could happen now. Let's find out how different cultures worship God already here on earth.
Mm-hmm. That's the favorite Bible verse of all of our ethno arts colleagues.
Right.
That vision, of everyone getting to use their unique expressions that God has given them. It's so cool to get a glimpse into that. And so how did you find yourself, how did you find out about the podcast and get connected more into this?
I think there was just one day I was just kind of going through Spotify, listening to lots of different music, and I thought, I wonder if there's something directly about ethnomusicology or ethno anything that was an artistic pursuit, and stumbled upon the podcast and started listening to it, and then did the natural progression of following on social media. And at some point in time, I had seen a call for volunteers, and my undergrad is actually in journalism, and so doing some volunteer work for a podcast was very appealing, just to be able to talk to others and combined my interest in ethno arts with some skills that I already had, plus my love of music and just chatting with people from all over. And so I reached out, and I think it took a little bit for us to actually connect, but once we did, it's been nice to be able to become part of this world.
Absolutely. and I'm so grateful that you did.
It's been
Melinda
wonderful.
has been a huge help in helping me stay organized and to follow up with people and make a plan and a better workflow to help us move things along more smoothly. And she's already had a few conversations, like the one that you're going to hear today. So it's just exciting to hear someone else's perspective, hear someone else in the conversation and other voices. We've said in the beginning, when Trevor and I started this podcast, that we wanted it to be not just us, but we wanted to have as many voices on as possible. And it's great to get your perspective on things and to hear how you interact with the stories you're hearing and the people that you're learning about. I'm so grateful. She's also going to help with some of our social media promotion in the future, and who knows what else. But this is huge, and it is very helpful. I'm so grateful. So thanks for being a part of the team.
Absolutely.
Do you want to tell us who you're talking to today and give a little introduction to what they're going to hear about?
Sure. So I got really a blessing to meet Joanne Richards and just chat with her about her ministry there in Jamaica. One thing that stood out to me is that she's a national working with the people there in Jamaica. And that was a little bit different perspective than people who go into another country to really and to learn about the culture and to help people pursue their artistic abilities there. But she was able to stay in her home country and really work within the music and help with Bible translation and then be able to produce songs for their church services, so their ways of worship and their just music that's very meaningful to them in their own language. And it was just a very powerful time of just hearing her talk about how the Lord has used that to really minister to the hearts of the people who were there in Jamaica.
Yeah, it's so good. I've heard Joanne speak at some conferences online and been a part of different calls. She's also a global ethnodoxology network member. She's on the board, actually. So I've heard her and heard her speak, and I love her heart for this kind of ministry and her heart for her people, and I think it really comes through in the conversation. You just see that so plainly. She is a delight, so I'm excited for everyone to
She
hear
is
her.
absolutely just a joy to chat with. Matter of fact, I wanted to book tickets to go visit her as soon as we got off our Zoom call, just to go and see her in action, but to meet the people that she ministers to and with. It was quite an inspiration and just a really fun conversation with her.
Awesome. I know one thing that she mentioned is her desire to connect with others, especially others in the ethno arts world, other people that are doing this kind of work, people that are interested to learn more. So I know that she would love a visit from you. And any listeners who's interested in learning more, I know she would love to hear from you as well. So we will try to gather all of her contact information and links to various things, and we'll put that in the show notes and also share that out later. So I do encourage you, after you listen, to connect with Joanne, tell her what you thought, your questions, and see what can come from that. Is there anything else from the conversation you feel like was important or significant for you?
I think for me, just knowing that the work of Bible translation is so pivotal in the lives of believers. I think I take for granted that I can go almost anywhere in the world and speak my native language, English, whereas it's the people in Jamaica needed one that's in their language, and that was able to kind of change their perspective of God. They kind of thought God was far off, but when they were able to see his word in their language, it made a huge difference. And then worship music was able to spring from that. And that just, I don't know, I hadn't thought about it in those terms. And it just was very important in how she does ministry, how the people go out and do ministry with each other. And so that has stayed with me, as I even think about ministry in my own community.
Yeah, that's awesome. Our last episode, we talked about Bible translation, but featuring groups in Russia, and I remember one of the quotes that they said was that when they experienced I think it was the Psalms, maybe, but experiencing that in their language and in their musical styles, someone said, God is speaking my language. And I like that there's that first recognition that God sees you, and he values you, values your language and values your culture. And then the reciprocity of that, of turning back and giving worship to God in that language and in the styles. It's such a beautiful exchange. And there are so many stories like that. And Bible translation is a huge part of making that happen for people who otherwise maybe believe that their language is less than, or the fact that they have to know another language to understand and get something from going to church. So God, like we say, this is one of the meaningful ways that people connect with God is through their music and through their other worship expressions. They can engage with the Bible in a language and form that's familiar to them. And then they're also equipped then to share the gospel with others in that language and in those expressions. So this is another great example of how God is moving in a different part of the world. I don't think we've talked about the Caribbean yet, so I'm happy also to shine the light on what God is doing there. So thanks so much for chatting with Joanne, and thanks for making this happen.
Awesome. It was a pleasure.
All right. Well, we'll transition now to the interview. And here is Melinda's conversation with Joanne Richards.
Nice. Oh, Joanne, I'm so glad to meet you. I have read about you in the ethnodoxology handbook.
Okay.
Some of the articles that you wrote. So I'm super happy to put a face with a name and then to chat with you a little bit. So let me just start off with that. How did you come into ethnomusicology? What was your path and your inspiration to pursue that field?
Okay, so I like to tell people that God tricked me into doing a master's in ethnomusicology because I didn't have any intention of doing a master's degree, let alone one in ethnomusicology. But what happened was that I came across this Mission Frontiers issue that was focused on music. And I can't remember if the other arts were involved, but definitely music. And there was a story in it about Jackpot Jess, a missionary to Brazil, to the Canela people. And it was a story about how he, as a musician from Canada, just could not figure out these people's music. So he was always singing off key, dancing off rhythm, etc. And then he called in his friend Tom Avery, who was the leading ethnomusicologist with SIL at the time, called him in to come and record some of their music, study it, and see if he could help them write some songs. for the people. So he came one summer, collected the music, went back, studied it, got samples of the translated scripture from Jack Popjes, and then wrote some new songs, came back the following year, introduced them to the people. And he said it was like pouring gas on a campfire. The people just immediately opened up and understood what God was saying to them and felt it. And I was like, that's what I want to do. So that was my inspiration, really. I was involved in music at home, at my home church, and from childhood, I was involved in music and music ministry. But after receiving the call to join God in His mission to the world, then I heard about that. Yeah.
That is very exciting. I actually have kind of a similar story on that. I was just trying to figure. Well, let me back up. Spent time raising a family, and then it was just time. My husband was like, "Why don't you just go back to school?" And I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, and then read an article, and it may have been on one of the Mission Frontier pages about ethnodoxology. And it's like all my worlds collided at that moment, and my heart just sang. And so I'm still figuring out what to do with it, but being able to speak with people like you and read your stories and hear them is greatly inspirational.
And I should tell you that what actually happened was that SIL used to run a summer program in ethnomusicology. And that's what I planned on doing. But that year, when I was ready to go, they were not running the program. So I was going to shift to literacy instead until I got the information about that program, which at the time was at Bethel University. And then only to discover that it wasn't just a summer program, it was an entire master's degree. So that's why I say God tricked me. Yeah.
Yes. He finds ways to get us to go where we need to go.
Yes, he does. He does.
All right. So you're in Jamaica. Had you always spent your life in Jamaica?
Pretty much. The first time I left Jamaica for any extended period of time would have been when I was in my third year at the theological seminary here. And they had an exchange program with what was then Fort Wayne Bible College and in Indiana. And so I was there for 9 months, I believe. That was the first time I left home for an extended period of time. And then after that, it was because of mission. So Cayman Brac, I don't know if you know the Cayman Islands, it's actually 3 islands. And so Cayman Brac is the medium-sized one, 12 miles long, a mile and a half that way, and 3 main roads, one along the north, one along the south, and one connecting north to south in the middle.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was there for a year and a half, and then the other place really was Burkina Faso when I was stationed in Burkina Faso with SIL. So first I went to the US to start the master's degree. Then I went to Switzerland for 3 months to study French. And then to Burkina. Then I was there for a year and a half. And so I keep coming back home is what it is. I go, but I keep coming back home. Yeah. I've been here. The other place I was stationed after Burkina was in Costa Rica, serving the Americas area. So I was the ethnomusicologist for SIL, serving the Americas area for a while.
Oh, wow. Okay. So with your work in Burkina Faso and your work there in Costa Rica, how has that impacted your work in Jamaica?
So, what actually happened was that when I was based in Costa Rica, I was serving the Americas area, as I'm saying, and Jamaica is included in the Americas area. So, it was a part of the area I was supposed to be serving. And whereas when I went to places like Peru and Panama, etc., they understood that I was just there to kind of prime the pump. But they were going to be the ones writing songs. It really was, I was promoting and facilitating the development of indigenous hymnody for the church, songs in their own language and in their own music. So when I went to those other places, they understood the mission that, I was just there to kind of stir them up and they would carry it on. In Jamaica, that was not happening.
Mm.
Jamaica being a very influential space, if we got it and started doing it and promoting that, then it would influence the rest of the Caribbean region. But our people, when I spoke to them, and it wasn't the music that was really the problem, it was the language. They did not think, I mean, some of the musicians, the gospel artists, when I would try to encourage them to intentionally write songs in the Jamaican language, they would say, no, God has sent them to the world, and the world does not know the Jamaican language. And so, therefore, yes, if they put it in English, everybody will get it. They want to go global. So, the local thing. And so, yeah. So that's what really started the work here. Eventually, people said to me, look, you are the one with a passion. You're the one with a vision. You are the one to do it. And I was like, no, no. God sent me to the world. Me.
Yeah, yeah.
But what was interesting though, Melanie, is that when I was packing up to come back home from Burkina, and I was learning to play the balafon there, and I was talking with my balafon teacher, I said, why? Why would God bring me over here to just send me back home? And he said he believed that God took me to Africa so that he could show me what needed to be done in my own home country. But I honestly didn't get it. I didn't get it until I started doing the work here and understood the challenges that we face here and the need that we have. Because you see, English was my first language. So, yes, I learned English first, and then the Jamaican language came later for me. But that's not the case with the majority of Jamaicans. I would say that the majority of Jamaicans learned the Jamaican language first. Many are learning them both side by side, though. So it's kind of hard for them even to know which one did I learn first. But if you ask them which one did they become fluent in first, then that helps them to kind of figure it out. So, so I didn't understand how important it was for the people to have the scriptures in our language, in Jamaican language.
Well,
Until,
Jamaican language, is that Creole?
okay, so it is a Creole language.
Okay.
It is a Creole language, an English-based Creole language, but it is a language in its own right. It's not a dialect of English. It it has its own syntax. It has its own grammatical structure. Yeah.
And when you came back to work, were there Bibles in that language?
No.
Oh.
So that's the whole thing, you see. When I came back, let me think now. I think they had like passages recorded, but not written. And then in 2009, I believe it was, they had the book of Luke. So they had started now working on it and they put out the book of Luke. But I was using it now after I came back home. After I came back home, I started using it before they even got Luke out, because I had friends who were on the translation team. So they would feed me passages and I would go into children's homes and spaces like that to minister using, yeah. So that is how I started with it, still not fully understanding until I had that encounter with that woman who explained to me that she doesn't think in English. She thinks in Jamaican. Yes.
Oh, well, that is the perfect segue to my next question. Tell me a little bit about that write up and how you came to understand the heart language. Like, tell me about what transcribed to just kind of change your thoughts on the actual heart language of a people.
Yes. Well, I mean, I agreed that it was the heart language of the people. What I didn't get was how critical it was to work with it and to have them work with it, have my people work with their language. Because you see, I didn't have the struggle that many had, because I can think in English. I can
Right.
think in English. It doesn't bother me. So I was going out there doing these sessions. The first one that really struck me, well, before that, there was a situation at a children's home, and I gave this one boy the King James version to read a passage from. And, he was kind of stumbling and all of that. And then I read it to them in the Jamaican language. And then they said that one boy said that if he had had it to read for himself, because, all of them were listening, if he had had it to read for himself, the King James, maybe after reading it a few times, maybe he would get it. But when I read it, he got it instantly. So when I read it in the Jamaican language, he got it instantly. So it began to dawn on me that, hold on, this thing is serious. So when I went into this church now for this Bible study, and I mean, English first, New International Version it was this time, and those who could read it together, and then I read it in Jamaican. And the atmosphere in the room, it just was transformed. It's like the people were inside the story. And I was just like, wow. And when I was finished, and this woman, she said, with the English, it was just words on a page. But with the Jamaican language, which we call patois, she said, with the patois, I could see everything in front of me. She could see it all vividly in front of her. She didn't need any explanations. She could see everything. And then she said, the thing is, I don't think in English, I think in patois. And every time I hear something in English, I have to take my time to process it, she said. And while I am doing that, a lot of stuff is passing me by. And let me tell you, that was the point at which I broke. Because I said, I was being selfish. Because it just didn't dawn on me to think about how people who are not fluent in English, how they function in spaces where English is all that is used. And it took a while for me to be able to speak about it without tearing up and breaking down, because it's years. it's been years we've been functioning like that without understanding. And you see, I could understand it because when I went to Switzerland to study French, then I was going to church in French, and that was just very difficult. Okay, maybe that's not a good comparison. Take Spanish when I went to Costa Rica. Now, I'm a trained teacher of Spanish, so it should be easy for me to function in the church, right? Wrong. Because I hadn't been immersed in the language, and really, I wasn't thinking in the language. So when I heard the Spanish in church, I would just be getting a pocket
Mm.
here, a pocket there, but not the whole picture. And that's how I was able to understand what the people were experiencing. But because it's natural for them, they didn't think there was an alternative, you see.
True. So if the written Bible is new to them, the written word,
Yeah.
and then someone like you has come in and you're reading it in their language, how has their music changed within their churches? Do they now have music in their language that they can sing and worship and praise God with?
Okay, so the full New Testament was published in December of 2012 in Jamaica. It was actually published in October that year in the UK. And then because maybe it was thought that if it's published first in the UK, then people will take it more seriously.
Oh,
So the December it was published in Jamaica. Just telling you what I think the thought pattern was at the time.
well,
So
those are I mean, I understand why they would do that. It's just interesting.
yes. So now, 2012, we are now in 2024. There are still quite a few Jamaicans who do not know that it exists, the Jamaican New Testament. Most times when I go into a space and I ask who has a copy, there's, and then also when you ask, okay, is this being used in your church at least once per month? No.
So, what are
Yes.
they using in their churches currently?
Oh, all the other English versions.
Wow. Okay.
Yes. But
Okay, so
this,
here's a complete side question because I I am not fathoming why it took so long to get a Jamaican Bible in Jamaican language. Like why and then here 12 years later, many people aren't even they're not they just either don't know about it or they are not using it. Like what are your thoughts on that?
okay, so there is a whole lot of stigma attached to the language.
Mm.
It's a language that was born out of enslavement, and so it is seen as a backward language, not even a language. It's not a language, it's just bad. People think it's just bad English. So they don't understand that it has its own grammatical structure, etc. Meanwhile, in the schools, we're still struggling to teach the children English properly. So, and they don't see the connection between the two things. That is, that the children's first language is many of them, it's a Jamaican language. So there is this stigma attached to the language. We were always told to speak properly if we ever veered into. But then in my house, it wasn't spoken. In fact, it was prohibited. My mother would charge us money if we spoke anything that was not what she called the Queen's English. Of course, now it's the King's English, but anyway. So I didn't really it here was how I was. And I think perhaps in the same way that some of my European and American colleagues had started apologizing on the field for things done by their predecessors, that perhaps I need to start publicly apologizing for how
Mm.
I viewed the language before, because I loved the language. What it was that if a person couldn't speak English well, then it was a different, and I, especially as a teenager, I used to just laugh if someone went on the platform trying to speak English, because you're not allowed to speak patois from the platform at that time in those days. So they're trying to speak English well, but of course they can't. So they're making all kinds of errors. And I used to find it hilarious. I mean, yes. So I would ridicule people for not being able to speak English well. And when I look back at that now, I can't, even when it's really funny, I just can't, because I realize how much this has contributed to damaging our society.
Mm.
Because if such a large number of our people, this is the language they're most fluent in, and yet it is not considered to be good enough, then it means that the people are not considered to be good enough either.
Wow.
Because, as I've been saying, when you validate a language, you validate the speakers of the language. But we are still waiting for there to be an official declaration that the Jamaican language is a language.
Is that a process currently happening to petition for that to be an official language?
Back in 2019, I remember that there was a petition. It didn't go well.
Mm.
What's supposed to happen? You know what? Let me not say that. Let me just say that there was just not sufficient support from leaders. And
Mm.
as a result, it didn't. But even then, the church doesn't have to wait for that.
Mm-mm.
Church can do. So the other thing, apart from the stigma, is the lack of education about language. So they don't understand how language works and what language is, and the fact that the difference between a dialect and a language is the size of your army.
That
So
I get. Yeah.
it's a matter of socio-political power. Yes.
Politics plays into so many different factors of our society in
Right.
every country. Every country can agree on this.
Right. But you know, Jamaica has been known for so many things globally. Well, maybe not so many things, but significant things. And one of the significant things is a person like Marcus Messiah Garvey. I don't know if you've heard of Marcus Garvey, but
No, who is
Marcus
this?
Garvey started the Pan-African movement, which spread, I mean, in a period where you had the Jim Crow and all of that going on in the 1920s. He was able to call together the largest gathering of people of African descent. And he was doing this not just on the in the United States of America, but all over the world. The black star that is in the Ghanaian flag now is in his honor. He set up places in Costa Rica, in Panama, in all throughout the region where especially where slavery had left its mark. He was empowering Black people, and he said that if people don't know where they're coming from, then how will they know where they're going? So the history was important to him. And he is actually the one who made the statement that only we ourselves can free our minds. It's in Bob Marley's song. I don't know if you know any of Bob Marley's music, But one of his famous songs is called Redemption Song. And
Okay.
he said, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Yes. And that has gone global. I mean, I've heard people of every hue, people of every race singing that song. But we still have some work to do. Yeah.
Yes.
We've
Sounds like it. So,
influenced the world. We need to influence. So what ended up happening? You had asked a question, and I realized I haven't got to answer all of it. What ended up happening was that I started doing some seminars on congregational music and cultural identity. And then God had started giving me some songs. So I would introduce these songs in the Jamaican language using Jamaican genre, like, of course, the reggae and the different forms of reggae, because dancehall, one drop, and then mento, which is like our folk style.
mm,
Right. So I had a range of different genres, pull them together, use the scriptures now that was being translated, as well as stuff I did because I wrote a song based on Psalm 23, and we hadn't any of the Psalms yet at that time. So I just kind of and I started introducing them to the people, thinking, I'm just priming the pump. I'm just showing them what is possible. Who am I? I'm no big recording artist. So, well, so people started listening to those songs, and some churches have started using some of those songs. I remember after a while, after the first album had been out for a number of years, about 4 years, this one church that had decided that every month they're going to have one Sunday, which is Caribbean Sunday. And on that Sunday, they're going to be using Caribbean music. So after a while, they got tired of the one album. And so they said, we need another album. We need another. So I came out with a second one. So the
oh,
first
wow.
one came out in 2012, so during Reggae Month, which is February. So it came out ahead of the New Testament. And then in 2017, the second album, which is based on the book of Revelation. So all the songs are from Revelation. Yeah.
Wow.
So I don't know. I am now hoping that after me putting out these two albums, that some other people will now start being more intentional about using our language and our music in new songs for Jamaica. Because this is my thing. We need to sing a new song. We've
Amen.
been singing all the foreign songs, and they're good. And what they do is to transform them to make them sound Jamaican, the rhythm and the vibe, to give it a Jamaican vibe, but it's still not enough. We need the
They need their
language,
heart song.
need the language in there as well. Yeah. So
Wow. All right. So your music, is it where I could access it? Is it on Spotify or any of those kind of streaming
yes.
platforms?
Yes, it is. Both albums are. It's called Come Make We Worship. But the come is spelled Kom. So
AOM?
no,
Okay.
K, come,
KOM.
come with a K. Yes, because in our spelling system, you see the k sound, that's always K, never C.
Oh,
So it's
that's easy.
yes, isn't it? That's what I try to tell the people. I have taught people to read it, but most people don't want to learn to read it because it's one more thing to learn. Why should I have to learn this? This is my own language. So I tell them that even the English speaking people, they had to go to school and learn to read their own language too, you know.
Right.
So it's called MEK, MEK, we worship. And the worship, according to our spelling system, it's spelled exactly the same way
Oh, okay.
as English. Yes, it works.
All right, I'm going to track it down and listen to. And what language did you say it's in?
Well, it's most of the songs are in straight Jamaican language. Some of them are mixed English and Jamaican.
Okay,
But it will come up as English. I think it's going to come up as English when I never thought of that.
I will
So
check it out.
that means it will come up as English, I think. But yes. So
So what are some current projects that you are working on?
okay, so for some time now, I have had to slow down because I was looking after my parents and they were ill. So my father passed away exactly a year ago.
Mm.
Uh, my mother went a couple of years before that. But so for the past 5 or 6 years, um, I've had to pull back. And what the focus has been, especially for the past 3 years, is putting out scripture passages in the Jamaican language from the Jamaican New Testament on YouTube. Yes. So, and then sharing it as widely as possible. And then in just since February of this year, we started having other people reading. Some of them are ministers, some of them are just random people, friends of mine, who are now reading so that people will see that it's not just me, but to get the feeling that it's spreading. What we have done in the past, we had a performing arts team of young people we would go into mainly church spaces to model what culturally relevant expressions of worship would look like. So take the service. In fact, in a couple churches, we went ahead of the service itself, spent time with the worship team to teach them the songs so that we would lead alongside them. And of course, we'll be reading the scripture and stuff. And yeah. So that I am hoping that we can get back there, but just to get somebody else to manage that, because I'm getting old now. And plus, just the whole idea of spreading the influence. If there is another person who could lead that, then that would be great because we want to be mentoring. So that's another plan, to be mentoring other young people. We've taken on interns from universities before to help with some of the work that we have put out. We had a magazine going for a little while when COVID. Yes, that was during COVID. It was called KW Magazine for Come Worship, and it's crucial connections in faith and culture. And we see that is very critical because in our in our context, growing up, we were taught, no, Jamaicans are 90 odd percent of African descent, but we were trained to think that anything from Africa is not good. Yes. So now that mindset needs to be shifted through prayer, through conversations. And so the magazine was to have conversations about worship and cultural identity among primarily people of African descent so that we can get to know ourselves better, we can get to know each other better, and through that, build deeper, more authentic relationships with God. So yes, that is kind of right there alongside everything else that we're doing. Because you see, this is a part of why there's so much pushback on the language, because this is the root of it, this is where it's coming from. We need to erase it, kind of thing. And no, so when I go into a space, I tell the story of how our language was born. I reformat the narrative for them.
Yes, reframing makes a huge help, I'm sure. I think I'm just surprised. I'm very thankful for this conversation to see where, our language and our people and the cultures we work with, it really is tied into generations of political thought. Like you said, the socio-political thought at the time and how that has been passed down.
You asked about projects.
Yes.
Really, I should mention, and through all of this, I haven't mentioned Crew 44, which is, it's a nonprofit organization which we established in 2010. The Crew, CREW, is an acronym for Culturally Relevant Expressions of Worship. And the 44, it's like 40 verse 4. That's how it's written, 40:4. And it's in reference to Isaiah chapter 40, verse 4, which says, every valley shall be filled and every mountain and hill shall be brought low. And so why that is so important is because what I discovered was that this pushback against people who speak a certain way or who make music a certain way or do art a certain way, it's all about having this hierarchy of value on human beings, where some people are up here and some are down here. And one day it dawned on me that if the valleys are being filled and the mountains and hills are being brought low, what you have is level ground. And so this is what we want to create, to facilitate level ground in the worship space where everyone has a place. So that if your heart language is English, it's there. And of course, that's not a problem because it's there. But if your heart language is Jamaican, then it's there as well. And there is equal value being placed on all people, regardless of what language. And so through the language, through the music, through the arts, this is our vision to create that level ground, and then the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. God says so, so it must go so. Yes.
Amen to that. Are you finding certain generations are receptive to the receptive of these ideas?
Yes.
I know at least where I am, this younger group coming up, they have very different views than how I was brought up.
Yes.
So are you finding that that's happening within Jamaica?
So I would say, generally speaking, the older people find it harder to make the shift in their minds because the thoughts, the ideas were planted over time. And however, I am also seeing that because the younger people have not been consistently taught about our culture, that they are becoming more and more Americanized. So, yes, I am not sure. And then when I check the analytics on my YouTube channel, where I'm posting the readings from the Jamaican New Testament every day, the majority of my viewers are older women. So, like in their 40s, going up to 60s. So, I'm not sure. I think that there are people everywhere who would be open if it's presented to them in a way that makes them understand, and understand not just here, but here, you know. Hearts. Yes.
Wow. All right. So you have your work cut out, but you have a
We
guy
do.
who's leading you each step, it sounds like.
Yes, not that way God can do. That's the Jamaican for there is nothing impossible with God. And the song that has had the most views on YouTube is based on that verse, Luke 1:37. Nothing, no day where God can do. So, I mean, we were speaking about what age group. The children of today in church and Sunday school, from my observation, they are still singing the same songs I sang in
Mm.
church and Sunday school, most of it. And so we've had this vision to do a children's album
I was actually
as
going to
well.
ask you about that. If there's, a goal to do something for the children.
We have it written down, so we better do it.
That is exciting.
And we also want to put out a manual to help the Caribbean church to write new songs so it would be a manual for developing new songs for the Caribbean church.
Oh, wow. Yes. I would imagine that would be just helpful as they catch this vision that you have.
Yeah.
Are you getting help? You say we. Do you have a team of people?
So there is a board, and there is now a growing team of people who are helping to read. We need more help. We need more workers. I'm realizing it needs more people, boots on the ground, to actually get the work done, because it's a lot of work, but it is also significant work in terms of the impact it could have, not just locally, but globally, And we always say there is a Jamaican in every part of the world. We somehow find ourselves everywhere. And so wherever a Jamaican is, it's a space for influence as well. There is a lot of room for impact for the kingdom. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Wow. All right. I know that your time is limited and I don't want to take it all, but I could just talk to you all day long. This is super exciting to see what God is doing in your country, but on a very foundational level. It's not just you bringing God's word to the country, but you're having to change views of the language in which it is brought, and that is it takes time and courage to change all those things. And it sounds like the Lord's opening the doors.
He is opening some doors. I guess we just have to be patient. My husband is right there alongside me, very passionate about it as well. So it's good when in your own house. And I did mention my mother, who prohibited the use of the language in this house. When she passed away in 2021, she was on her way through the Jamaican New Testament for the third time on her own. And she was using it not just for her own devotions, but to have devotions with her caregivers as well.
Oh, wow.
So that is my inspiration.
For sure.
She was 84 when she passed away. I mean, yeah. God can do anything. God
can do. Wow. This is exciting what the Lord is doing. And actually, I'm going to be honest. My initial questions for you were going to be about your the story in the handbook about working with the juvenile delinquents. And so anyway, as we started talking about the other things, I mean, I think that was very inspirational to my heart, at least. So maybe another time we can get together and talk about that.
Maybe, because just recently we were saying we want to go back into those spaces. Well, at that time, I mean, I just kind of very quickly had pulled together a team of people that I didn't even know well to do a workshop, a 4-week thing in that space. But now I think we need to go back, not just there. Recently, I heard that in the UK, there is a demand for the Jamaican New Testament in the prisons.
Okay.
And I haven't gone into the prisons in Jamaica with it yet. So we have work to do.
Some work, absolutely.
So maybe once I've started that, maybe we can have another conversation about how that goes.
Absolutely. Do you have plans for that? Is that on your calendar yet? Or is that just still
Not on the calendar yet, but it's certainly in, what should I say? It's on the plan for our next board meeting to look at how we can fit that into the schedule. Yeah.
Oh, how wonderful. Oh, Joanne, this has been a thrill to my heart to hear what's going on. I spent my summer in Botswana, Africa. I have a daughter who is serving as a missionary through the International Mission Board there. And so I just went to visit her just to help her out with some projects. And their official language is Setswana and English, but their church services are mainly in English with a little bit of Setswana. And I learned very quickly that you kind of have to know Setswana to be able to speak to the people, but yet they know that they need to know English. So I don't know that it's the same that what you're dealing with, but it really struck me as it was two very different views on what should be a language, and so I was just surprised by it.
It's a similar situation, you know. So, and this is why I believe that there needs to be more conversation between Caribbean people and people on the African continent so that we can understand what our common issues are and maybe even find out more about ourselves as we communicate on this and together find solutions to the challenges that we face, you know. Things like that would really be nice. But one of the things that I hope for from even this interaction on this podcast is I am praying for greater connection between people in the Caribbean and those involved in ethnodoxology globally. Because I know that not many involved in ethnodoxology globally know personally anyone from the Caribbean. So
Yes.
So I am hoping that doors will be opened for us to have more communication where we get to know each other. I'm even having problems getting to know the rest of the Caribbean region because it's very diverse and spread out linguistically and even culturally. So there are commonalities, yes, but there are differences too. So it's hard when you say you're from the Caribbean. I don't know what comes to your mind when you hear somebody say they're from the Caribbean.
Oh, for me personally, I think of the music, and I think it's steel drums, lots of
Think of
sunshine.
steel drums.
Yeah,
Yes.
I don't know if that's completely accurate, but yeah, I have a very just a kind of a generalized view. But
Right.
surely it can be because, you know, we've talked a little bit about politics. The islands have very different political structures. So the culture
Right.
has to be different.
Yes. So, and the steel pan was invented in Trinidad and Tobago. Of course, there is conflict among them as to whether they agree with that or not, because Antigua wants to claim it. I'm not sure what Barbados is saying, but it definitely did not come from Jamaica.
Ah, so there's
Right.
great influence from the African continent and just figuring out what truly makes a Jamaican then, or a person who lives in the Caribbean.
Right. And it's the lumping, you see, that creates the problem because we are different, you know. But nevertheless, we can still get to know each other. And I'm happy for this opportunity to share on this podcast. I'm not sure what the audience is, but I know that the audience definitely includes ethnodoxologists who are working around the world in different parts of the world. And so,
Absolutely. But Joanne, thank you so much for just spending some time. Let me see what our next steps are, and then what we can do to just kind of bring your story out and see what we can do to get you connected.
All right. Wonderful. Bless you. Bless you. Take care.
So, bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. We would love to hear what you thought.
What resonated with you today? What questions did this raise? Anything you'd like to learn more about? Maybe you have stories you'd like to share.
Please feel free to contact us at ethnoartspod@gmail.com or follow us on Facebook and Instagram at ethnoartspod.
We also invite you to subscribe, rate, and leave a review on whatever platform you're listening on. This will help others to find out about the show. Please feel free to share the podcast with others.
We look forward to sharing more with you next time on Sparking Creativity, the Ethno Arts Podcast.